episode of Let's Be Perfectly Queer. On today's episode, I have two exceptional guests with me. I have the former host of With Jerry here at Rogers TV, Jerry Croteau, also the executive director of the Gilbert Centre, which is more about what we're talking today than his past as a host on Rogers. And Mark Hill with Elevate is with me today as well here, talking about the Gilbert Centre's 25th anniversary launch, which is happening in February. And in conjunction with that, and in partnership with the folks at Elevate, an incredible event that we're having on Valentine's Day called Be My HIV Valentine. And we're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about how Elevate and the Gilbert Centre came together on this project, and of course focusing as well on the 25th anniversary of the Gilbert Centre and the history behind it. So, Jerry, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Mark, welcome.
Thank you.
Pleasure. So I want to start with you, Jerry.
Okay.
25 years of the Gilbert Centre for Social and Support Services here in Barrie, Ontario. The Centre started as the AIDS Committee of Simcoe County. Give us a little bit of the history behind the Gilbert Centre.
Sure. So in 1993, it was a grassroots operation. Started with a few folks. So one of them was Ed Gilbert, who was the first HIV positive gay man to come out publicly, not just about being HIV positive, but also gay. And he, with a bunch of others, started a thing called the Jericho Fund to help folks who were HIV positive. And then in those days, back in the mid-90s, a lot of folks who came out as HIV positive lost their jobs. If they were renting apartments, landlords wanted them out because the misunderstanding and misinformation about how HIV was transmitted, and so on. And so in 1995, they incorporated as the AIDS Committee of Simcoe County and received, shockingly, just $58,000 a year from the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care to start what is now the Gilbert Centre. We rebranded in 2015, and our programming has diversed from HIV and support to support for trans, gay men, specifically harm reduction, youth, family, and a program called Safer Spaces is part of it. And so in 2020, we're a budget of just about $1.2 million.
Wow. And
we just hired 5 new people, and so we're a staff of going to be 15 in February. So
that's
fantastic. It's been 25 years. Yeah, and I've been there for 16 of the 25 years.
Wow. Well, and full disclosure, I am also an employee of the Gilbert Centre.
Oh, you are?
The Gay Men's Sexual Health Coordinator. I get there once in a while.
But I don't know, I never see you anymore.
But we also have seniors programming, which you didn't mention as well.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Another big part of the Centre. Yeah. Along with our harm reduction. And the Centre has certainly become a certainly more rounded and diverse Centre than just focused on.
I'm just so flustered, I forgot about that one. But yeah, the New Horizons grant, which incorporates a sister organization in North Bay and in Sudbury. Yeah, that's a biggie.
So 25 years, that's a huge accomplishment, especially here in Simcoe County.
Yes.
And obviously I have close connections with the Centre, working there, and my connection with the HIV community. Mm-hmm. What is it that you have planned for the celebrations throughout the year to celebrate that?
Well, we're starting with the Be My HIV Positive Valentine on the 14th, which is, I think, happening in this space.
It is here at Drawers.
With Elevate, and we're so thrilled to be partner with Elevate because it is a good way to launch the 25th because it's Valentine's Day, it's got the love connection, it's also got HIV, which was the impetus for the organizations that started back in 93 and incorporated in 95. So that's the launch of it. And we're going to have a few events throughout the year, starting with Elevate and SRLs on the 14th of February, and then leading up to the gala, which is on the 27th of November of 2020, which is going to be held at the Barrie Country Club, which is going to be the third annual, so it's going to be a biggie. Yeah. We have a few other events, but some of these things take time. We have committees. We have a fundraising committee meeting this week to start outlining what we're going to be doing in the next year. Little pieces like this are going to happen, not little, but events like this we're going to try and hook up onto and use that as a reminder of how long we've been around and how long we hope to continue to be around.
Tell us a little bit of the history of Elevate and the impetus that brought that to be.
Sure. A friend and I, Jane Clemente, who couldn't be here this morning, we came together after many years of sort of talking about these great places that we had been to dinner to. I traveled quite a bit, so there was always, experiences that we had had, and pop-up dinners are becoming more and more popular. So we thought, why not launch our own series? And thankfully, the guys at Drawers, and I think our anniversary was maybe yesterday. Our first one was actually here, or roughly about 2 years ago. And the whole idea is Elevate is an unconventional series of gatherings around food, drink, and art. And we really think of art as food as well, right? The culinary arts.
Absolutely.
And it's really when every ingredient comes together to make the experience so magical and also so memorable that you take it home with you, and it's just such a great experience. And I know you came to the first one.
I have, yes.
Yeah, so what we typically, the whole idea is we kind of come up with an idea. Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's Jane, sometimes we're just sort of riffing, sometimes we get inspiration from other people as well. And then we'll sort of think of maybe a chef that we could work with. And then we'll think of, how to integrate some of the music into it and some of the art into it and all the rest of it. And also the space itself plays a big part in it. This space was our first one here, Drawers. It's such a great room. And typically we have one big long table most of the time. And we really want it to feel almost like a dinner party where some of the guests, but you don't know some of the guests.
Right.
So we have a pretty organic way of attracting people into the, let's say, Elevate experience. We don't advertise or anything like that. We just sort of put it out there and let people sort of discover it. And I think that sort of attracts people that are really into it. So it's the challenge. Opening a new restaurant takes a lot of money nowadays, right? And sometimes, we can recognize a lot of the great restaurateurs that are local. A lot of the chefs that make food from scratch don't bring it in from, let's say, an industrial kitchen. So that's a big part of it as well, is people that really put their heart and soul into it. And every concept for us is completely different. So this is going to be our concept 6, I believe, for this one. And every one of them is really distinct. So it happens, it's kind of like a magazine. It comes together and then it's done, and all you have are the pictures and the memories and all the rest of it. So,
and it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. Yes, as you've experienced with us.
Yeah.
We've got the formula down pat. This one's a little different. Right. When you came to me, I guess a couple of years ago, and talked about the whole June's Eatery, which I had kind of followed as well, the whole pop-up experience, and I had been part of Dine on, I think it used to be called Dine on Bloor Street or something like that, or
now Taste for Life.
Taste for Life, or that was it, Taste for Life, which is another great experience. So what they do is they bring in chefs and then they set up essentially a restaurant in a lot of the stores and offices and different places along like the sort of center of Toronto. So I think I dined at Burke's one time or something like that, where they had the tables and the jewelry and everything. It might have been better at Tiffany's, but nonetheless it was a good experience, or Holt Renfrew. But so that when you came to me with that idea, it was like, this is a perfect combination. I think you had the same idea at the same time.
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
like, this could work together. This is a good connection in terms of Elevate. So
just to inform our viewers, when Mark talked about June's Eatery, June's Eatery was in November of 2017, and it was a pop-up restaurant that Casey House in Toronto. Casey House is Canada's first and only hospital for folks living with HIV. Opened in 1988. And back in 2017, they had the idea around smashing stigma associated with folks living with HIV. They conducted a survey, and it was shown that more than 50% of Canadians would not eat a meal prepared by someone living with HIV, or even served by someone living with HIV, for fear of contracting the virus. When I heard about this, I said to my husband, we're going to this dinner. So the first iteration of June's back in November of 2017, I was there as a patron and had an amazing experience, met a lot of the chefs that evening who were living with HIV, and immediately hooked up with the CEO, not hooked up, you know what I mean, met and spoke with the CEO of Casey House, Joanne Simons. And I remember saying to Joanne at the end of the evening, having sat through this meal, and it was done in a family style, so Aaron and I sat at a table with I think there were 8 or 6 other folks at our table that we'd never met before, and had an amazing time getting to know these people over a meal. And I said to Joanne when I left, I said, this is coming to Barrie. And I had a working title in my head of June's North back then. But it's funny you mentioned that Elevate was, almost 2 years ago now as well, the first one. And I was fortunate enough to be part of that first Elevate event. And I remember thinking that night, this is how we bring June's Eatery to Barrie. And obviously 2 years later, it took a lot of planning and sort of logistics. And at the time, I wasn't working at the center and didn't have as strong a connection with the Gilbert Centre that I do now. But I do remember thinking, this is the perfect marriage for what I envisioned coming to Barrie for this. So when I brought it to you and Jane, just back before Christmas, we talked about.
Well, I think you and I met last summer.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for a while.
You planted the first seed, and then we were like, okay, we'll start to plan it out and think about it. And then it was around Valentine's Day, and we thought, what better way to kind of bring love and passion? Because a lot of what our dinners do is bring the love and passion of food and people together, and to embrace, the message around, breaking, smashing the stigma, beginning to show love and compassion for people that have HIV and, have a hard time to share their diagnosis or the fact that they're living with the virus. So.
Yeah, and I think it's great because there still is so much stigma beyond just the food stigma around HIV, obviously. And the idea of having that happen here locally and trying to get as many folks locally, not only locally sourced items that we'll be using when we're preparing the food, but local folks living with HIV to participate. That's been a bit of a challenge. I know Casey House is doing their second edition of June's just a few weeks after our Valentine's edition. It's the March 3rd, 4th, and 5th in Toronto. This time around, I'm actually a chef for June's Eatery as well, great. So I'll get to sort of have the experience on the other side of the table. But certainly bringing it here, we've got 16 folks living with HIV that are helping out with the event in Toronto for Casey House this year. We have 4, including myself. And what I like about, obviously on a smaller scale, we've got a table of 50 that will be here in the Drawer Studio. And I have to, before I go any further, thank Mike Windle and Mike Carty from Drawers and Level Design for allowing us to have this space. It's a beautiful space. I had my wedding reception here. The first Elevate was here. I've been to many events in this space, both down here and the beautiful space upstairs as well. And to have a space like this here in Barrie, I think is pretty darn unique. And to have folks like the Mikes, Big Mike and Little Mike, offer up this space to us and allow us to come in and celebrate these different events that get held here, I think that's amazing, and I am forever grateful for that and for their friendship. So, Mike, thank you, and Mike, thank you. They're also building my house, so I have to suck up a little bit. But yeah, we've got. We'll have one long table in this space, seating for 50. So it's a fairly exclusive evening.
Yeah, and we can sort of talk a bit about how the events typically unfold. Usually we have a welcome cocktail and maybe some snacks or whatever as people arrive, a little appetizers, and it gives a chance for guests to kind of get to know each other. Sometimes we encourage people to sit next to somebody that they don't know, rather than kind of just clustering together as a group. Because the whole point of it is the kind of connections, and there have been some really interesting connections that have come out of the dinners, So the whole idea is to kind of sit next to somebody you don't know, or maybe just a bit further away, and then the courses will be served, of course, by our chefs, and the cooking happens right in the space, so everyone's kind of part of the entire experience. I mean, if they could see on the other side of where we're sitting right now, but that's all part of the experience. It's a seated dinner. Typically, we pair with different wines, and it's usually a generous pour with it as well. So it's not, you get almost a full bottle of wine between two people or something. And then the courses, of course, the menu, I mean, we really have to get down to the chef, because that's a big part of it too, is served different courses. And the evening, it lingers. There's a little bit more time to kind of, get together and chat, time between courses. So this is not just a come in, eat, and get out. And we usually have an artist that performs something, or a DJ or some music and stuff. So it's a full evening of entertainment. It's not just a meal and sort of get up. So the whole idea is everybody is part of the event. It's like a family dinner. Everyone's part of it in some ways. Not that they have to pick up plates, but they are part of, let's say, the entire experience.
Right.
And then this year, for this event, we are having Chef Suzanne Barr, who is going to be our chef for the evening, and she is known for being in a documentary called The Heat about women in the kitchen, which screened at Hot Docs, and I saw a couple years ago, and I believe is just being, I think, distributed a little more widely right now. And it talks about the stigma of women in the kitchen and the challenges they face in that area. And Suzanne has had a diner in Toronto for a number of years, and then shut that down, and then decided she's been doing a few TV shows on Food Network Canada, and then she's going to be part of a new show this
Wall of Chefs.
Yeah, Wall of Chefs.
February 3rd is the premiere date for that. Yeah, I was fortunate enough just last week when I was in Toronto. I've been conversing with Suzanne and the manager of True True Diner, Stacey Brooks, over the event and some of the logistics around there, and I thank you for bringing Suzanne to my attention. It was you who sent me the article about heat and kitchen revolution, and did some research, and I said, great, let's reach out to her. And I think it was you and Jane who said, but you need to be the one reaching out. So it's like, how do I do that?
But it was so great. It was like
it happened very organically.
She seemed so passionate. And she does want to support the community, LGBTQ community, and is very passionate about it as well. Yeah, she is. She is a very passionate advocate for people of color and folks in the LGBTQ community. And again, I had the pleasure just last week of sitting down and having a meal at True True Diner on King Street. King Street or Queen Street? I get the two royalties mixed up. One has cars, one doesn't.
Exactly.
In Toronto.
The streetcar goes down there. But anyway,
the King Street.
That's King then. Yeah. Okay, thank you. And had a delightful time. Actually got to meet Suzanne and Stacey as opposed to just emailing and chatting on the phone. And she's absolutely wonderful, a perfect fit for this event. And I have to admit, it wasn't my first choice, because I initially went after Matt Basile, who is the celebrity chef for June's Eatery, and that's when I found out through Matt, when I asked him about coming up, because he and I have talked about this over the last couple of years as well. He wasn't, unfortunately, unavailable to help us out with this event, given the proximity to the next June's, and that's when I sort of had an inside scoop on when the next June's was going to be. But when you sent me Suzanne's information, and I didn't think I was going to hear back from her because I had no way of really reaching out to her physically. So I did the cyber stalking and sent her a message on Instagram, and then I think there was a contact link on the website as well, on Suzanne Barr Food. So I sent a message there, and then nothing. So I, like a dog with a bone, I decided, well, I'm going to send another message. And that second message took, and I heard back from them, and it's been gangbusters ever since. They've been on board, and they've been very passionate about the involvement in this. And I think we actually have a short clip from Suzanne that we're going to be able to show at the end of the show, just her talking briefly about her involvement.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's going to be an amazing event. I think she's, again, the perfect marriage of what we're trying to do here. And the fact that she only has, instead of having 15 chefs to train, she only has 4 of us to worry about. And I'm glad you touched on the point that not only will those of us living with HIV be preparing this meal, but we're also going to be serving it as well, which was a nice twist that I was hoping we'd be able to incorporate into this event, so that we can come out from behind the kitchen and actually interact with the guests.
Yeah, a big part of Elevate as well is that the access to the chef, like you said, but also just the fact that, typically We would love for the chefs to actually sit down and talk with people, but we realize that sometimes is a bit of a challenge when they have to get the food out and everything, especially with a group of 50, that can be a bit more challenging. But we do, love that the chef talks about each dish and why they prepared it, and always the menu is a secret until people arrive.
Right.
So we do make some, we've never really had situations. We ask if people have any, dietary restrictions, and we accommodate that for sure. But typically the whole idea is the experience that you're going to get there, and that you're going to be served something that you just don't know.
Right, exactly.
And it's going to be delicious no matter what, and it's always great. So.
And there's a media thing, right? Ahead of time?
Yeah, I was just going to get to that. Yeah, we've talked a lot about the meal and the dinner, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the media launch that's happening prior to the dinner. It's going to be here at Drawers as well, starting at noon that day for just a cocktail hour. But tell us a little bit about the reason behind the launch, because not only will it be sort of a launch of the Be My HIV Valentine, but also the 25th anniversary for the center.
Yeah, well, as Mark and both of you have been saying about, it brings people together, and the launch is part of the Gilbert Centre's desire to not only highlight the fact that we've been around for 25 years, but we've been around for 25 years in a lot of challenges, supporting HIV positive people and gay men and women, but also expanding our programming to include families, seniors. But, and Simcoe Muskoka is a very conservative part of Ontario. And so that has been a challenge in working with partnerships and creating partnerships. It's come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. And so this helps to highlight that, hey, we're just an organization that is trying to do some good within a challenging environment, not just for our not-for-profit, but for other not-for-profits. Fundraising is difficult.
Right.
So anything we can do to highlight the work that we're doing in a way that's become a little more sophisticated. Elevate enables us to attach ourselves to an event that's more sophisticated. Walks are becoming less and less appealing to people. And in a climate of fundraising, what's unique is Elevate, is very unique, and so attaching ourselves to an event that's so unique puts us ahead of the game in terms of highlighting who we are and who we want to be affiliated with.
Right.
And so the media launch is going to bring attention to that, and I know the media in Barrie is very anxious and always willing to help us out anyway over the years, and I know with Elevate it has. So that's part of it as well, is getting that attention that's it doesn't legitimizes us, but it does bring us to the forefront of we're here, we're a work that's been ongoing and we continue being ongoing, and who our funders are, like the PHAC, Public Health Agency of Canada, the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, Simcoe County, Trillium, and United Way are other ways of supporting the work that we're doing, and that means a lot to us, and so we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, the media launch is going to be invitation only, so we're going to be reaching out to certain folks within the media, and we're very fortunate as part of this event, we've been able to get some major sponsorship from ViiV Healthcare, which is a part of Gilead Pharmaceuticals, specializing in HIV meds, and they've come on board and have helped us financially to be able to put this together. And we talk about fundraising, but I want to make it clear this is not a fundraiser. The HIV Valentine is an awareness campaign. Yeah. We aren't going to be making any money off this. I'm hoping we're not going to come out of it in the hole. But yeah, it's a chance to raise awareness around folks living with HIV and the stigma associated. So ViiV has really helped us a lot with that. And getting ViiV on as a partner, that brings us Impact Public Affairs, which is also helping to generate some buzz around the event, getting some media from outside of Simcoe County as well to bring a larger awareness to what's going on here. And I think that's going to be really, really helpful.
It's interesting because the Toronto Star contacted me over the weekend.
Oh, wonderful.
And wanted to know what's happening within the LGBTQ community in Barrie. And so I have an interview with them tomorrow morning, and it's going to we'll be able to highlight the Elevate experience and our 25th anniversary to say there's a lot going on in Barrie and in Simcoe Muskoka, and a lot of it is credible and shows the maturity of not just our organization, but the maturity of the sponsorships that we're getting, like Elevate and Vive and
Yeah, I think it highlights that there's still a lot of work for us to do
Yeah.
as well.
I think that's the biggest thing for us in terms of getting in. I mean, of course, when you first came, Randy, to us, I mean, it was for sure we wanted to be involved, but now with the Gilbert Centre as well. And, you know, we talk about the stigma and a little bit about, you know, how the survey and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But as I know from, you know, people that I know that are living with HIV in the gay community, there's still a lot of stigma around and misunderstanding because the Gilbert Centre and other organizations were so effective with the message about HIV and about, you know, protection and safer sex and all the rest of it. And now we're coming out with a completely, not different message, but just saying people with HIV that, you know, are undetectable, are untransmitted. It's not, the virus cannot be transmitted. But there's still that perception. It's almost the unlearning that we have to do, that we were so effective over so many years that now the message is kind of flipped and people are like, what? You know,
Absolutely,
how's that
it's
possible?
that 35 plus years of fear and ignorance that we have to overcome. Mark, Jerry, I want to thank you for being on the show today. I know we talked about Vive. We have a couple of other local sponsors that I don't want to forget about.
Edward Jones.
The PrEP Clinic is helping us out, and Andrew Shambi, and of course
Morgan
Sheridan from Edward Jones also.
The tickets can be
Professionals in
purchased
Practice.
at
Eventbrite online.
Yes. You can check our Instagram.
Yeah, we'll put the link up at the end of the show. But again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Be sure to tune in to next week's show when we're going to talk more about Be My HIV Valentine with the actual chefs, the folks living with HIV here in Simcoe County that are going to be part of that event. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And thank you again for watching another episode of Let's Be Perfectly Queer.
Hey guys, it's Chef Suzanne Barr here to let you know how excited I am to be a participant on this amazing event on February 14th. Being a part of something that is going to embrace awareness through love and understanding and breaking bread amongst people, strangers, friends, and family, I'm thrilled to be able to jump on board at anything that impacts in the way that this night's going to impact on all the lives that are there and those that it's going to touch outside of those doors on that night.
One of the most kind of innate human things is like to bring sustenance, to share that. Like that is like an inherently human thing to do, is to share food.
I was 22 years old. The message from the physician was there's no medications.
30 years ago, you were basically told to quit your job, do your will. Everybody was dying.
There's certainly been a trail of stigma that follows you every day. It doesn't really matter where you are and under what circumstances.
I believe that there are a lot of things we discriminate against people for, and I think HIV in some cases became a surrogate for a lot of other people's other biases.
It's not just ignorance, it's fear. These people are terrified of what they think HIV is.
If you ever want to really connect with someone, you feed them, right? Like that's the best way to get someone to maybe listen to you a little better.
I think I always thought that my life was decided for me, what it was going to be, what it was going to look like, and maybe there are people out there that actually understand me or are willing to listen. HIV is not the one thing that defines me.